Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, the Dragon Kingdom Saga 7847 for 6 Elementals interviews. And today, I have an icon in the fantasy sphere, someone who is a former self-published fantasy blog finalist, someone who a lot of us who are far newer in the self-published fantasy game, someone who a lot of us look up to. I'm sure a lot of people as a mentor and someone who is seen as a fabulous writer and all-around good person in the community. I have the honor of welcoming Mr. Mike SHEL today. Mike, how you doing?
Doing okay. Thank you, PL, for that overly positive introduction.
Well, yeah, I'm so honored that you're here. Again, we were talking backstage, and it is true. When I came on the scene, when I first got into the social media community, that the little bubble that we kind of have with predominantly independent or self-published fantasy and sci-fi authors, you were one of the names that was consistently mentioned as being not only a pillar of the community, but great writer and someone whose series was iconic in that indie sphere. And I think you're an OG. You're an OG, and you've been around, been there, done that. You've had a lot of success. Your series is extremely well reviewed and acclaimed, and but yet you've kept the reputation of being quite humble and being a great guy. I've never had the honor of speaking to you personally before, but our interactions on Twitter, etc., have always been fantastic. You've been so generous and such a kind person. So it's a real pleasure, like I said, an honor to finally get to talk to you. And of course, recently, I finally got to read your self-published fantasy blog finalist book in 2018, The Aching God. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
I didn't know what I was expecting. I tried to go into it without knowing too much about the book, but we will definitely get into this for sure. And your entire series, I can't wait to continue. This is going to be a series I know that I'm going to love, and it's going to wind up in my top indie series of all time. I just haven't, frankly, read enough indie books and enough completed indie series. I lament the fact that I couldn't even make a proper ranking right now because I haven't read enough completed indie series. But that's going to change because yours is one of the ones out there. So I'm definitely gonna finish that.
Fantastic.
So tell us about yourself, Mike. So how did you get into this whole self-published fantasy thing?
It's a long, drawn-out story. I'm originally from the Detroit area. Grew up in Dearborn, Michigan, actually. Son of a firefighter and homemaker. I loved fantasy and sci-fi growing up. Did a ton of reading and also writing. I started having to write short stories in the fifth grade. We had to write weekly short stories that we shared with the class, and I think that got me started with the writing bug. And then it's probably the age of about 13 or 14 that I started writing what I try to do my novels, and started playing D&D when I was an early teenager as well, and loved the storytelling element of that and creating. And but I had the problem of starting something and getting 20 or 30 pages deep, and then just getting bogged down in editing and over editing, over and over and over again, and not really being able to take projects to completion. It was easier to come up with adventures for D&D than it was to write a full novel. I went to undergrad and tried my hand at novels many times, and ended up writing 2 modules for Dungeon Magazine back in the early 90s that were published, and then went to grad school in clinical psychology and kind of left all that behind. I didn't think I had the stamina to, there's no real such thing as self-publishing back then. There was vanity press, right? But there wasn't, self-publishing happening at that point. And I just didn't think I could deal with the rejection. And so I did my career, found out in about 2000 and what was it, 2010, I think. I got curious to know if anything had been said about the adventures I had written back in the 90s. And when I did some searching, found that one of the adventures I'd written was extremely well received, very popular. And so I contacted Paizo Publishing at that point, who had done Dungeon Magazine, and asked if I could start writing modules for them. And they were very generous. And I wrote for Paizo for about 7 years before I ended up finally being able to write Akengod, which it was originally designed as a Pathfinder RPG module.
Wow. So you originally designed this as RPG, but was it as expansive, as big as it was when you originally wrote it? Like, how did this iteration come to being?
Well, I pitched the module to James Jacobs, the creative director at Paizo, 2 Gen Cons in a row. I really loved this story, and it was basically the story of having to go back into something a dungeon that had already been explored, and the previous expedition had been disastrous, and finding out that what people understood had happened in the past was not actually what did happen, and just having players go in there and discover that. And so that was really the extent of it. But when I pitched it the second time to James Jacobs, he said, I don't think this is right for Pathfinder, but it sounds like something you need to write. And so I had been attending the Writers Symposium at Gen Con for years, and had gotten some great writing advice that made this huge difference for me when I finally sat down to write Akengod as a novel, that enabled me to get a first draft done in a ridiculously short amount of time, considering I'd never been able to do anything, anything of great length before. But it really expanded as I was telling the story. The whole, and you don't know all the details yet of what's really going on in this world, having just read the first book, but it was probably about halfway through writing the first draft of Akengod that I saw the whole trilogy in my head about what was really going on, and so I did a good deal of discovery writing in writing Akengod, but that the whole world, having to create my own world rather than the world of the campaign world of Pathfinder that it was originally set in, and all those details just really my mind just started really just creating all sorts of what I thought were cool twists and turns and things that I thought made sense in a world where magic was real. And I tend to ramble, so it definitely wasn't the module proposal was just that dungeon delve and finding out what had happened the first time. But the more expansive story didn't come to fruition until I was deep into the first novel.
So, did you consider going like the big 5 traditional publishing route with this book at any time? Did you pitch or?
Actually, I because I had written for Pathfinder, I had some contact with an editor at Tor, who was the person over the Pathfinder Tales line, which was a novel set in the world of Galarian. And so because that editor had been at the Gen Con Writers Symposium for several years, I thought, I'm going to approach him with this and see if he'd be willing to take a look at it. So I met Chris and introduced myself. He had played some of my adventures, and he said, sure, give me, when you're at a point where you feel like it's ready to be looked at, send it to me. And so probably about 6 months after that Gen Con, I sent him a copy. And then the following Gen Con, we sat down for a lunch on Tor's dime. Tor bought me a meal. And he essentially told me that he did not think thought he said it's better than 80% of what comes across his desk, but none of the big 5 publishers are going to be interested in it. And he explained that had at the time a lot to do with how sold people were on the whole grimdark thing, and the shorthand way he put it is that my protagonist was too nice. So I didn't want to make him a more complicated person than he already was. I wanted to have someone who we could believe in, who and the thing, grimdark has its place, and there's some wonderful grimdark stuff out there. But the thing that I find makes me want to stay away from grimdark is that the idea of no good deed goes unpunished. And I like the idea of heroes and people being able to make a difference, having people to root for. And I recoil from the cynicism. And so I wanted these people that we could root for, even though the world is dark. So I talked with this tour editor, saved me a lot of grief of, spending the time trying to track down an agent and then submitting over and over again and for rejection over and over again. And at that point, I had gotten in touch with Phil Tucker of Bastion, Path of Flames, and he invited me into a Slack, which include people like Ben Galley and Dirk Ashton. So I was really lucky to be brought in there, and they held my hand and walked me through the process of self-publishing.
Wow. Well, and again, you're mentioning some of the other, icons of the OGs of the self-published fantasy milieu. And so you got into this Discord and you hooked up with them. And was it them and their encouragement and the knowledge, that expertise that they passed on, was that what led you to SBFBO?
Yes, I did. I knew nothing about SBFBO prior to that, and nor did I know the process of self-publishing and that I could hire my own editor and hire someone to do the artwork and getting beta readers, and without the help I got from folks in the Slack, I don't think I would have gotten nearly as many eyeballs on this book in the first place. I'm absolutely, totally indebted to those folks and what they did for me. So yeah, I didn't know anything about SBFBO at all. So, and the timing of everything, I think I published the original book was published in April or May, and then I think June was when SBFBO entries happened. So it was just timing was just perfect.
Yeah, those are great people too. All of them that you mentioned, Dirk Ashton, Ben Galley, etc. They're just wonderful humans that, they really want to uplift and support, people in the same game. It doesn't matter, if you sell 10 copies or 10,000, they're all about giving back and really, really, really amazing. I had the honor of meeting them both finally after, all the social media stuff on when we went to Scotland for the recent Worldcon.
Yes.
So that was fantastic. Hoping to meet you one day too, my friend. I hope in the future. But
that's one of the cool things about our community, with some very rare exceptions. It's a very generous, supportive community, right? I don't know many people who think we're playing a zero-sum game, right? Where there got to be winners and losers, and everybody that I've come in contact with, supportive of one another, encouraging, others to check out, new authors, and it just doesn't have a cutthroat vibe. It really feels like a community, and it's something we desperately need in this world in so many ways. And it's really been a beautiful respite from some of the ugliness I think we see in the world we're in today.
I would have to agree. I totally share that sentiment. I've had nothing but positive experiences ever since I got into this business, and I wouldn't want to change. I wouldn't change it for the world. So So tell us about you get your tribe, you get to know the self-published community, you enter SPFPO, and then lo and behold, you make the finals. So tell us about the whole experience.
Oh, it was my book was the first one that was named as a finalist, and it was people in the Slack who told me, congratulations. And I said, what? I really hit the right group, the right blog to review it. It just hit Quill, Sarah Quill. It just hit her wheelhouse, right? What she was looking for, and so that was kind of I was blown away. No expectation that was going to happen. 300 books being submitted. And part of what happened then after that is that was my last really good review in SPFPO. It was all downhill from there. And part of it was that several of the blogs had already reviewed my book. And so what they did is they gave it to other people at that blog to review it, who invariably did not care for it as much as the original reviewer did. And so I ended up about in the middle of the pack. And after when so it felt it was a little bit of a letdown, and I saw my sales kind of tank after that. Initially, when it got into the finals, I had this big surge in readership, which is wonderful, right? And got the books out there to more people. But it tanked me for a while until I got the second book out and things started to turn around some. So there's a lot of luck involved in this. The fact that I was in the finals, if I had been in any of the other 9 blogs, I would not have made the finals. And that's the way it is. There is an element of luck with all of this in terms of who succeeds. And there's so many gifted folks out there who, just don't get the eyes on their books, who don't have, we've got some whales, right, in our pond, who are just hugely successful.
Yes.
And people love their stuff, and that's awesome. And then others, they're still writing wonderful stuff, but they just don't get as much attention. So, you mentioned the fact that I try to be humble, and that's not really hard for me to do, because I'm just acutely aware of how much of this is luck of the draw and being in the right place at the right time and getting the right eyes on your book. And realizing that, I work hard and I like what I'm writing. I'm not embarrassed of it. I'm proud of what I do. But it's not going to be for everyone. And I'm grateful for any success that I've had along the way.
But that said, and you are very modest and you are very humble, my friend. And but you have to remember, I don't have the count up with me, but last time, I think it's something like, the Aching God, something like 3,400 plus Goodreads reviews and 4 points, what's an average? That doesn't lie. That doesn't lie. I think most independent authors would be extremely pleased with in the thousands of reviews and that average. And I think,
I don't want to. I know it sounds like I'm whining, and I don't want to do that. I said again, I am grateful, and the fact that I've got like 3,400 reviews on Goodreads, and I think something like maybe close to 13 maybe on Amazon. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, when I published the first book, my wife and I, we looked at the money that we had invested in editing and laying it out and all this, all the things that go along with it, and said, okay, it's April, it's May. Let's cross our fingers. Maybe we'll make back the money that we put into this by the end of the year. And that happened before the month was out. So it's like, this is amazing, right? And and I at that same first week I was approached by Podium Publishing about doing an audiobook version of and signing a contract with them, and that thanks to Phil Tucker poking at his representative at Podium, telling her to take a look at this. So it was just a whirlwind of super cool things. A lot of it due to luck of the draw and timing and meeting the right people.
Yes, that is true. But again, those are the amount of reviews, the volume of reviews, and the rating don't lie. And of course, I have heard throughout the communities, again, since I've become part of it, nothing but praise about your book, about your writing. And also, I think the fact that every single book I've read, I haven't read nearly all of them in SBFBO. And of course, there were books out there that certainly, everything's subjective, but you can say, oh, that should have been a finalist, or that should have been the champion, et cetera, et cetera. But I've never read a bad SBFBO finalist book, in my opinion. Again, subjective, but I've never read a book that wasn't really good. So I think as well, I don't think you make those finals with a bad book. I just don't think you do. And, the bloggers, for as much as their tastes are subjective, like everyone else, they're good at what they do. And they know what constitutes a good book. Obviously, they have their individual tastes, but they know what constitutes a good book. So I think you'd be very proud about, your SBFBO finalist tag, Flags Fly Forever, and you can sport that on the cover with pride for the rest of your life. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
So let's talk a bit about the actual book and the series, as spoiler free as we can. So, as I said, this book it was amazing. I definitely caught in it all an undertone of, and I don't know how you classify or quantify your book, a real undertone of horror, like almost a cosmic horror type of vibe in this book, and I want to get to that later. But before I start blabbing, can you tell me in your own words more what this book and this series is about?
Supposed to be good at this elevator pitch thing. I've never been good at this. So I've always said that I can do an elevator pitch so long as the elevator is trapped between floors, right? I think that it's a dark fantasy tale with, yes, strong horror elements, but really drawing from what I do in my professional life. I'm trained as a psychologist. I've been a psychotherapist for going on 30 years now. My specific area of expertise is anxiety and panic. And so I've worked with a lot of survivors of trauma. And the old adage, write what you know. I love fantasy. I thought let's do fantasy with a real element of how the horror, how the darkness of the world would impact its inhabitants. That there's always, it's fun to watch an adventure where someone fights a demon and then has some clever quip that they say after they've slain the demon and go off to have a beer. There's a place for that, and that's a lot of fun. I wanted to do something that really said that explored what would it look like to really be exposed to that in the real world. So taking a lot of RPG tropes, I wanted to portray it in a realistic fashion. And I thought it would be interesting to have a non-traditional protagonist who is older and was suffering from PTSD. And so it's really about regret, trauma, resilience, how people pick themselves up and move forward, and the importance of connection with others, and how we depend on relationships with others and connections with others to survive and move past our pain.
Wow, that's very profound. And and I really identified as, as someone a bit older. I really identified with Oryx so much. He was just that guy that he spoke to me, from the pages. He went, his past and what he was coping with was so traumatic, and you depicted it so well. It felt so real that you could feel every time he had those nightmares, dreams, visions, his all of the emotions, right? Like you said, the regret, the guilt, right, of who was left behind. He was coping with so much. He dealt in his life with things like suicide and death by illness. There was so much going on with him. But yet, and I know you said at the onset that you want to write a character that was essentially good and still, in all of his trauma and all of his issues, was a good person and clung to the positive. And it really came out with him. And I think, but the trauma definitely came out. And he was someone who, it's being haunted by the past. You can't change the past, right? And it's all about what you do with your future. And but even as much as sometimes it feels like he's barely hanging on, to everything and sending everything by a shred, he just keeps moving forward, right? And he's struggling with all these inner demons, and but he just he knows that he's broken. And with all of that, he's also someone who is, from my perception, he still managed to be a mentor, a father, someone who was there for advice, that you could rely on, in some ways very solid as a rock, and even while overcoming and dealing with his fears and his issues. And I found it to be just a fascinating, such a well-drawn character, as were all the characters in the book. Is he based, if I may ask, in any part on yourself or anyone that you have in your family or friend circle, or an amalgam of people perhaps in your life, that like a composite? Like,
I think in some ways, Oric is my idealized self, with hair for one thing. But yeah, I think I there's a lot of me in Oric. I think not all the good stuff necessarily. But when I was creating the character, the image I had in my mind was I had seen Mark Rylance in Masterpiece Theater's Wolf Hall portray Thomas Cromwell, and that was the image I had in my mind of Oric, someone who's highly competent and has a great deal of confidence, but then adding in this element of trauma. And what I thought was interesting about the story is that he was being placed into a position of responsibility after he had, said, I'm out. Where certainly he had things on the line. It wasn't just about him, but he had something personally on the line with the life of his daughter. But that he also had to be a leader and mentor for these younger field agents, despite his own damage, despite his own brokenness, and which is one of the reasons that I thought the old soldier Bellick had to be there. He had to have someone who he could lean on if he was going to play the role of a leader there too. He needed to have someone who he could go to for support as well. So,
yeah, his again, another amazing character. I think I'm sorry, but I was fascinated every time I heard or saw about the Queen. She was creepy as hell. I the whole concept of, she was kept alive because she's beloved, and then she became something very macabre and sinister, and very ghoulish. Like, it was just a fascinating portrayal of a character that, I mean, rulers and monarchs can tend to be intimidating. She was intimidating in a whole different way. And I absolutely love that character. What was the inspiration for that character?
I can't really put my finger on where that idea came from. I mean, a lot of there were some tropes that I thought we see in, if we've got this magic through like our role-playing games like D&D and whatnot, you have things that extend life and can resurrect people, bring people back from the dead. With magic of that power, surely the nobility and royalty would have access to sorcery that would be able to do that kind of thing. But I also, I thought that, if sorcery was a thing, there's no way the people in power are going to let that out into the open without anyone being able to study magic and use it in any way they wanted to. It had to be controlled, which is how I ended up coming up with the idea of the Royal College of Sorcerers, and the fact that all of those sorcerers have what's a binding jewel set in their foreheads that essentially prevents them from using magic in any way that would be act against the crown. Because the religion is this polytheistic, a big pantheon, not unlike Greek and Roman gods, and with their different spheres. And I thought, this trickster god, what would this trickster god do to get his? Why would anyone be going to his temple, right? And there would, what kind of machinations could he be doing to play with the world? And so the reason that Queen Genevieve is as she is out of desperation, they called on the cult of Timulus, the trickster god, to help out. And he said he did what he said he was going to do. Right? He saved their queen. Didn't say that she was going to live for 147 years. Right? And what would happen to her over the course of those unnatural years. So yeah, I can't remember how I came up with that, but it's probably one of my favorite aspects of the world and the nation of Halifax, that it's ruled over by essentially a quasi undead queen.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And death in this book is a big theme, is death and the undead, and or even people keeping their dead relatives around, which is another scene that that will live with me forever. That was one of my favorite. I don't want to spoil too much. That was one of my favorite scenes, and character, another character. But
I was going to say, since we were talking about Genevieve, I'm wondering if this would be a good point for me to share some artwork.
Oh, absolutely. Would love to. Would absolutely love to.
For those who aren't aware, recently did a Kickstarter to produce a deluxe edition of Aching God. It is still available for late pledges, but I have several pieces of artwork, and this one that I'm going to share right now is of Queen Genevieve standing in her throne room.
Okay, let's take a look at this. Oh yeah, she is just creepy as hell the way I imagined her. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So let me zoom in a little bit on her here. If we get some details of those nails.
Oh, yeah.
And
she's falling apart, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She's falling apart.
Yeah. So my thought on Genevieve was Queen Elizabeth past her prime.
A bit past her shelf life. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that is amazing. It's just such a creepy, you just the whole concept of someone being kept alive and decaying, right? And smelling like rotting, right? Like that whole thing is just, oh yeah. Yeah, very much. Yeah, very much so. That is incredible.
This is
incredible.
This is the artwork of Andrew Molesky, who does 2 pieces.
Yes.
In
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh wow,
yeah.
it's fantastic.
I was giggling like a monkey when I saw this first pass that he did on that piece.
And the eyes, ooh, just gives you the chills. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just kind of chef's kiss on that work. So
that was absolutely. So you have these characters, and I think who is your favorite character in the Aching God? At least the first book. I haven't read the other 2, so other than Auric, I would suppose. Like, who's your favorite character?
It's a toss up between Bellic and Syrah, the priest of Bellic.
The priestess. Yeah, the priestess.
Bellic, I mentioned that Auric was based in part on Mark Rylance's portrayal of Thomas Cromwell in Wolf Hall, which is magnificent. Masterpiece theater. If you haven't seen it, you got to run and watch it.
No, I haven't. I've only watched the old classic with what was it, Laurence Olivier? The old 50s, 60s.
Yeah,
movie.
This is actually based on Hilary Mantel's books series, Wolf Hall and Bringing Up the Bodies. And
so about the English Civil War, essentially. I would
it's Anne Boleyn.
Oh, it's Anne Boleyn. Okay.
Yeah, you're thinking of the of Oliver Cromwell.
Oliver Cromwell's right. Thomas. You said Thomas.
Yeah, Thomas Cromwell.
Thomas Cromwell. I apologize.
And it's a much more sympathetic portrayal of Thomas Cromwell than you've probably ever seen before. But yeah. So at any rate, Auric was based in part on him. Bellic was based in part on the character of Titus Pullo in HBO's Rome, played by the late Ray Stevenson, which is just basically in thinking of a Titus Pullo who had grown older and wiser than the one we see in that series, which is another one of my favorite characters from shows that I love. So I love the kind of old soldier grown wise, but still has some boy left in him, and is capable of getting in trouble.
He seems a lot less scheming and political than Thomas Cromwell was, of course. Who famously helped engineer Henry VIII's divorcing of, or getting rid of, should I say, Anne Boleyn.
Yeah.
So, but I love that character. But I really enjoyed the camaraderie between the kind of band of misfits in the way that is brought together for this mission, and it's I think it's one of those things where you can just see this isn't going to turn out well. This isn't going to turn out well. And Auric is the only one who really knows what's waiting for them and even he doesn't grasp the gravity of everything. I think what I loved about a lot of the cast that you assembled to bring with them, where they're all very quirky, had their own idiosyncrasies, and they're very unique, but they also all overcame their issues with one another to try and really band together for this common goal. And they all have their own motivations, of course. Some trying to prove themselves, and so. But it was fascinating to watch Auric's leadership galvanize them and bring them through some pretty horrible situations. And I think it took a lot of courage for all of them to do that. But Auric, with what he was facing, it was a real testament to the kind of character that he was imbued in. And it was it was really, it was easy to root for him. Let's put it that way, as you intended. So if you as you intended to have a character, it was really easy to get behind him, root for him, want him to survive, and again, I cannot wait to continue with the rest of this series. This is marvelous. I have to say, the prose was phenomenal. The prose is outstanding.
Thank you.
And I'm a prose sucker, right? You write well, and you got me, right? If your writing reaches me, if I have to, if I'm challenged or have to run to the dictionary to check a few words, or if, I feel drawn in by the evocative nature of the writing, you got me. And all those things were present. It was really, really well done.
Thank you.
Was that also, I mean, and no disrespect at all to any lit RPG or RPG books. They're all, a lot of them are just some fantastic books out there. But you don't really think of them as having evocative prose. That's not what typically people read those type of books for. But yet yours does. Was that something purposeful that you wanted to incorporate? Was that just you, the way you express yourself? Was that did you have to tone it down for or bring it up a notch for what you?
I think there have been more than one reviewer who has mentioned that they feel like my prose have improves over the course of the 3 books. So it's like I've written 3 novels, right? All 3 of them have been published, and that's I tend to be I think in some ways a little more flowery. And sometimes I think it can be a little turgid. But there is, and that's not, here's the thing, that's not for everyone. There's some people, like, for instance, I love Gene Wolfe. I love Gene Wolfe's prose. It is not something that is simple. The dictionary needs to be close by when you're reading it. It's not as though I'm going out of my way and just sitting there with a thesaurus open next to me when I'm writing. I want to find the right word, and I want to paint vivid images, and it's I tend to be pretty self-critical, but when I read over what I write, I mean, even to this day, I'll look back at something that I've written and I'll read it and I'll say, I like that. I still feel good about that, right? And so I write what I want to read, and because I think I'm dealing with serious, mature themes rather than just adventure, and that sounds dismissive, and I hate that, but I'm trying to do something different. It's not just let's tell a good yarn. I think the story is obviously important. You want it to be interesting and involving and engaging and exciting, but I wanted to explore some things in greater depth. So we look at things like trauma. We look at things like how people deal with regret, and complex emotions, feeling 2 emotions at the same time, which is oftentimes what you'll see in simpler, more straightforward stories. You got one emotion at a time, and that's the emotion that we do. And I don't think I wanted this to feel like real life. I wanted to tell a fantasy story that wasn't embarrassed of being fantasy, because sometimes that's what it feels like, that when people are writing fantasy with lots of self-referential humor, and it's almost like it's apologizing for the genre. Don't worry, we don't take ourselves too seriously, right? And I didn't want to write purple prose or just the pathos and be over the top like that, but I wanted the drama to be real, and for us to care about these people and be worried for them, because that is the way you described that, that this is not going to turn out well necessarily, right? That bad things are going to happen. And that's what makes the story worth reading, is that you don't know who's going to make it or if anyone's going to make it. So
yeah, I definitely had that sense.
Yeah. So for me, the prose is I wasn't shooting for, that's the way I write. I wasn't necessarily trying to tailor it for a specific reading level, or it was just, this is what I want. I write what I want to read, and I'm more interested in kind of getting deeper into people's motivations and their struggles and experiences, because that's what I do professionally.
Wow. Well, I mean, certainly, I feel you succeeded. Again, I thought it was an excellent book, and certainly, I've read not as many self-published books as I'd like, and we were talking about that a bit backstage. But certainly, this stands out as one of those top books among the self-published books that I've read, and it was, like I said, absolutely phenomenal. And do you now? This is a trilogy, and I understand that you've also written is it a prequel, like a .5 novel or novella for this? Is that correct?
It's a short story. It's a 10,000 word short story, which actually, if for those of you who want to do late pledge for the deluxe edition, you can look at Aching God on Kickstarter. It'll get you there. There's a link that'll get you there to pledge for it. That prequel story is included in the deluxe edition, and it was originally written as something to kind of hook people in, to get them in for the novel, but I think people actually will get more out of it and enjoy it more if they read it after they've read Aching God. So this prequel short story comes after. Read it. It happens before, but reading it afterwards, I think it's a richer experience that way.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I got to check that out as well.
And actually, I should mention that short story, which is called Barrowlands, is available in the Lost Lore short story collection. It's a free ebook available at Amazon, with a number of different self-published writers contributing. And Dirk and Ben and Phil and Tim Whitecastle and T.L. Greylock and a number of others.
Some big names. Yep, some big names
free.
in the self-published. Okay, definitely got to check that out. So what else? And again, so just to go through kind of your bibliography and your background. So what else? I know you published all those stories. Like you published in the anthology, you published this series. So what else have you written besides all the other stuff that you've told us about?
There was another short story that is set between the events of Sin Eater and Idol's Fall, or maybe concurrent with Idol's Fall, or with Sin Eater. That's my fiction. I've written a number of products for Paizo. I've written standalone adventure modules for Pathfinder, installments of their adventure paths, gazetteer entries for their campaign world, support articles for their campaign world and their adventure paths, organized play scenarios. So again, about 7 years of materials. And if you go to my website, that would be under RPG work. All those things and links to them are listed. So, and then of course I'd mentioned the two modules I had written for Dungeon Magazine back in the day, and then a ton of journal articles that no one wants to read that are not under my pen name, and countless narrative summaries of sessions that no one will ever read either. So
Wow.
yeah, so most of the writing that I've done over the course of my life has been technical writing, and one of the things that I really had to be trained out of when I started writing for Paizo was passive voice. It's the curse of technical writing.
Yes.
So
if I'm asking, you may be able to tell us, you may not be able to divulge what you have planned or what upcoming projects are going on. So can you tell us, are you able to tell us, if it's not straight up, about what you have planned to write in the future? Will there be any more books in this universe? Are you writing something totally different? Will you write big fiction again like this? Like what does Mike SHEL have in his pocket?
a lot of my time lately has been devoted to the deluxe edition of Aching God, and we have every intention of doing deluxe editions for both Sin Eater and Idol's Fall following, since the first campaign was successful. But But I have a number of novels in my head for the future, all set in the same world. Might be different parts of the world, different times. What I've been working on for a long time now, and it's been a long, slow process, but I am still writing the first book in what is either a duology or a trilogy, 200 years after the events of Aching God, and or the Iconoclast trilogy, set in an analog of the New World, the colonies to the west, which is but basically boils down to a weird Western. And it's the title it's carrying right now is Trailing Fire, this first book. And I have no idea when it's going to be ready.
That's okay. You've obviously got it cooking, boiling on there, and I'm sure it's the preparation is going to make it that much better. Do you have a writing process? So you published Aching God. Was that 2018 Aching God?
Yes,
that's right. And so now you complete the trilogy. You have the short story. So do you have a set time in which you want to produce work? Do you have a certain in your head a volume of work a body of work that you want to say, okay, when I look back and I'm 80 years old, I've published 10 books or whatever. Do you have goals in terms of, okay, well, when I want to write 1,000 words a day or a week, or how does your writing process?
It's sporadic. What's happened for all of my writing, PL, is as I said, it was years. My first novel, I didn't publish my first novel until I was 53 years old. And what happened was I was at a writer's symposium at Gen Con, and there was an author. I wish I could remember who he was, because I'd want to give him a kiss, because he talked about his writing routine, which was to sit down and do one quick editorial pass over whatever chunk he had written the day before. So if he had done 2,000 words the day before, he would sit down, he'd do a quick editorial pass over those 2,000 words, and then pick up writing from there. So when I had the idea for the story of Aching God, and I'd been rolling the story around in my head for about 5 years, thinking of it as a module. So I had a good idea where I wanted to go with it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to give that a try. And I sat down and ended up writing 132,000 words in 10 weeks. It was amazing. It was miraculous. I had never written like that ever it felt magical. And when I got that first draft completed, I thought to myself, well, geez, I can do 3 or 4 of these a year now. Jokes on me, of course. The next book took me 10 months to get a first draft. But it was done the same way. It wasn't that I wrote for 10 months. I had a lot of writer's block, a lot of fits and starts, but then finally something clicked, and boom, within about a 12-week period, I had written 146,000 words, right? And then the next book took 18 months to get that first draft done. And it was the same thing, where fits and starts, having to go back and forth, rewriting some things. And then all of a sudden it clicked, and I wrote 172,000 words in about 11 weeks. So it's been 3 years since I published Idles Fall. So I don't know how much more of a lag there's going to be before that magical time hits. I've tried tried to kind of sit down, force myself to write, and I might be able to spit out 500 words when that happens. But I don't feel good about it. It doesn't have that vibe to it. When I'm in the zone, and it's every single time when it clicks, every single time I sit down to write, I'm writing 2,500 to 4,000 words in a sitting. And that just hasn't been the case since I finished Idles Fall. It's been slow. And I've got some stuff that I'm really happy with, and I think I've got a really interesting story. I'm excited about the story. I want to tell the story, but it's going to come out when it's ready. I remember between Sin Eater and Idle's Fall, at one point I said to myself, maybe I only have 2 books in me. Maybe that was it. But what I think I've just accepted now is that it's going to come when it comes. And I still, I'm still at my day job, and the money that I make from my writing has enabled me to back off 1 day a week at work. So now I work, about 32, 34 hours a week at my day job. The writing, the royalties make up the difference. But I wish that I had the discipline of a lot of these other folks who just are they're much more disciplined. They're much more focused than I am. I am not one of those writers.
Well, I think you have to give yourself a bit of a mulligan here. You have a very busy and demanding career, clearly. You're a professional, and you have a family, it sounds like, and a lot of other things going on. And as you said, the book will come when it's time, and writers should write at their own pace. And your tolerance level and comfort level for writing and mental health and all kinds of things come into play with all of us. We all have to remember when it comes to writing that, all of us want to be prolific. You know what I mean? Especially like you, I started publishing at exactly around the same time in our early 50s. And, as someone who's done it when you're a bit older and hopefully somewhat a tiny bit wiser, you realize that a burnout is real. And like you, I work full time and this is my side gig. And, I'm not going to compromise the rest of my life. This is really important to me. Writing is really important to me. It's something I love. Right. It's something I crave. Yeah. Something I think about do all the time. But I do it when I can. I have made a commitment to myself personally. That's my own personal commitment. There's people far more prolific than me that write, dozens of books a year and they have full-time jobs. But my commitment is a book a year. That's my tolerance level, right? It's a book a year. And when I finish my series, which is 7 books, I plan to take a bit of time off before I start the next one. But I've managed to publish a book a year, and
hats off.
Well, thanks, man. But even that is like I see writers, like I said, that are so much more prolific that have other jobs too. And again, hats off to them. But we all have our own tolerance level, like I said, for those things, right? And I think you should really be proud of what you accomplished because again, your books are highly regarded and they're sold well. And there is no rush. You will publish as many books as you were meant to publish, right? And so will I, and so will everyone else who's out there writing. And I think the main thing is to look back at whatever your body of work is and to be able to feel proud of it. And clearly you do. So that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. You can't be slavish to some, unrealistic goal that you would only burn yourself out or the quality of your writing would suffer because you're trying to achieve some benchmark, right? Mm-hmm. So but hats off to you. But yeah, I can't wait to read the rest of this series. This is fantastic writing. And I think reading all your reviews, I think you would agree, like almost every review comments about how well written these books are. And I think if nothing else, that says a lot about a writer because even if a book isn't to your particular taste, if it's well written, there's a level of respect that you have for the craft, right? So, I think that says something, Mike, sure. about your work. So I think you should be very, very proud of that.
Yeah.
So tell me something. Who are some of your writing inspirations? Or books that you've read that you really, really have enjoyed in the sci-fi fantasy sphere? Like, yeah.
I mentioned loving Gene Wolfe. I read Michael Moorcock as a teenager, and it was really enlightened me to what could happen in fantasy and how wild things could get with sword and sorcery, and appreciate that. I have a different experience going back to his stuff now, but it was instrumental in kind of my development, my interests in fantasy and sci-fi. I think that I'm just going to run off a list of self-published authors right now, because that's what most of when I read fiction, that's what I'm looking at. I think that Phil Tucker is brilliant. I love his stuff. He's one of those. He's a very prolific, hardworking writer. Just wonderful stuff. His Bastion series, I love. And you can use his books as weapons. They double as weapons. They're just these beasts that you could bludgeon someone to death with. But wonderful stuff. Writes the best fight scenes in fantasy, in my opinion. I love Evan Winter's work. Obviously, he's trad writer now, but he started off self-published, and also just a very kind and brilliant guy. When Evan's the kind of person, when he starts to talk, I set down whatever it is I'm doing and focus my attention, because I know what he's going to say is going to be worth hearing. Right. Tamandra Whitecastle. I love her Living Blade series and her Queens of the Weird. I love that. Teal Greylock's Norse books, wonderful. Alec Hudson, his work is great. Dorian Hart, I love Dorian's Heroes of Spira. I'm going to leave people out, and that's one of the downsides of doing this. M.L. Wong. I want to punch Emma Miracle in the nose, because she is so damn talented, and she has no business being as good as she is, as young as she is. She's just absolutely brilliant. Miracle is going to have an amazing career. Just incredibly gifted. Virginia McLean. I love Virginia's stuff. Intisar Kanani's work is wonderful. Dirk is an institution of man, who you can't say enough good things about him, and the most colorful social butterfly in the world. We don't have to play 6 degrees of separation with Dirk. We could play like 3 degrees of separation. We'll get to whoever we're going to get from Dirk. So, Bengali stuff. I love Chasing Graves. Just, all that stuff. Wonderful. And I could just go on and on. We have an embarrassment of riches in self-published fantasy these days. Just absolutely brilliant and amazing stuff. And there's so much. It's still a thing where people assume that everyone's goal is to get a trad deal, right? When we get a traditional deal, that's gonna do it. I think what's going on in indie publishing right now is so vibrant and exciting and varied. Zach Pike's stuff, just hilarious.
Orconomics. Yeah, I need to read that. I haven't.
Clever stuff. Orconomics is wonderful. You should. We had well, there's only a one-sided rivalry going on with Zach, because Zach won Spiffbo the same year I was in the finals, and he's a great guy. That's the other thing that's so neat is that I really like these people too. There's so many times that we find out about our heroes and we're disappointed, and
don't be your heroes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But there are so many people in the indie community who are incredibly talented and just really wonderful people. I feel incredibly privileged to have made these connections and to be alive at this time, and to make these connections with people who write just wonderful stories and are just excellent human beings.
Very well said, and I concur. put yourself in that category, of course. And I was mentioning Worldcon in Scotland. I mean, to meet some of these people was just it was the highlight of my year, right? To shake their hands, hug them, and to talk face to face. It was something really special. So, I feel like, we are privileged and we are at a golden age, if you will. I've heard a lot of our colleagues have said this of indie, where trad is trad. It's always going to be there. We have a lot of friends, obviously, that traditionally, all respect to them, and they're doing amazing things. But indie is no longer, a redheaded stepchild that's an outcast, seen as a lesser quality product. You see the kind of books that indie authors are putting out. You see the covers. You see, the glossy special editions. You see the sales numbers. You see the Goodreads and Amazon numbers and ratings and reviews. You see the acclaim, and the booktubers talk about this truly is a golden age for indie sci-fi fantasy, and we're publishing what we want and what the people want. And and like I said, I think there's room for everyone, all forms and methods of publishing to coexist, hybrid, etc. But I think indie is truly taking the place by storm right now, and I don't think that's going to change.
I hope not, and I hope a couple other names came to mind that I feel like I have to mention because I think their stuff is wonderful, and they're also wonderful human beings. Bryce O'Connor, Davis Ashra, great stuff. Cast and the Outcast, wonderful series. I just, I knew I'm going to leave people out, and I feel a little sick to my stomach knowing I'm going to do that.
No, fantastic stuff. Like I said, I've had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing a lot of the people you've mentioned, and just from the interviews and stuff, or meeting in person, warm, wonderful, amazing humans, great writers, so much talent out there, so much talent. And again, I think with this golden age and new writers putting stuff out every day, and you're like, wow, and it's really hard to keep up with a TBR. It's really hard. I've had my peaks and valleys with that. Is there some stuff out there that you're really anxious to get to that you haven't been able to get to, that you've read either from those writers or new ones that you really like? I want to read this.
To be honest, a lot of what I'm reading now is nonfiction. It fuels a lot more my creativity, I think. It's a little harder for me now to read fiction with a reader would. I find that these days I'm having a lot more trouble turning off my writer's brain when I sit down to read something, and I get too analytical about what's going on and what someone's trying to do. And it's really interesting the way they that's a really interesting metaphor they use it. And rather than it keeps me from getting immersed the way that I like to be immersed when I read. So I'm tending to read a lot more nonfiction these days. I'm a pretty huge history buff, but I can't. I mean, there's so many things on my TBR. It's obscene. I don't know. Right now, I think what is it that I was looking at? I'm looking at a book by Morgan Shank, a young guy who's writing a new series. And the first book is Die Young, and I've just picked that up, and it's promising so far. So I'm enjoying that.
I mean, there is so many. I mean, I have no less than 10 to 15 arcs that I'm still trying to get to. It was not looking at before the year is done. I've accepted that, but I've been so blessed that people are honored that people send me their stuff and want to have me read it and want me to review or comment in it. But there's a lot of up and coming writers out there, and there's a lot of writers who are doing it for a while, like you said, who haven't been quote unquote discovered to the same level yet. But we keep plugging away, and pat on the back to all the writers out there, but including especially a shout out to all the older writers coming into the game a bit later. with some life experience who are, bringing, the heft of their life, and all things they've seen behind them, and hopefully some lessons learned. And that's, kudos to you for coming into the game at the stage you did and being so successful, and just hopefully you continue to enjoy it. And I wish you nothing but the best and continued success in your writing and your life. So I don't want to monopolize your time. I want to be, but I think, do you have, this is a couple things. First of all, do you have any more of that artwork from that? Like, that was fantastic, the Queen, from that special edition stuff that you can show us?
Yes. Let me pull up some things. We have another character portrait of Countess Alanda, who ends up featuring a lot more prominently in the series than I first expected. In fact, she was just a character who was just going to occupy one or two chapters.
Wow!
And what she ended up becoming much more pivotal to the arc of the story. So this this portrait was done by Yorgos Katronis, a Greek artist.
The detail, the fan, like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I really dig that. It's just really captured that character well. Brett Bullion did two pieces for us. One is a pirate battle, and we have our sorcerer who is with the party, Dell. Let me see if I can share that with you. She is summoning some nasty beasts.
Ooh, okay. Let's see this one. Oh, look at that.
So she's tattooed, and has her binding jewel there, and
look at the faces on the crew.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh. That's impactful. That is impactful.
And then let me share one more with you. This takes place in the Barrowlands, that kind of destroyed wastelands where there are many ruins of a wicked empire many thousands of years in the past. And this is a fight with some a manticore.
Okay.
This is also by Brett Bullion.
Ooh, you don't want to tangle with that.
Yeah. Who also Brett also did the bookmark for the deluxe edition, which is of the iconic sword in the novel.
Yep. That
again,
a character of his own. That sword.
And comes to play an extremely prominent role in the series. So
wow,
yeah,
that artwork is fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just thrilled with the quality of the work that we got. Let me show you one more just to.
Oh, absolutely.
Anastasia Shestakova, a Ukrainian artist, did this piece, which is a bar fight that takes place on their when they're stopping off at the island of Tessie.
Okay.
So we see Naeus here, drunk on the floor.
Yeah.
Yes. Bellic standing up, swinging a plank.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. So just really, thrilled with the quality of the work that's done, and already got plans in my head for what art we're going to be commissioning for the next deluxe edition.
Oh, that's going to be an incredible deluxe edition. And I want to confirm, is this with Is this through like Waterstones or Binding? Who is
Merrick Books are the folks with Andrew Cobble, who is AC Cobble, another wonderful
AC Cover? Yeah.
indie author. He is running a lot of these Kickstarters now and coordinating, and so I did it through with great help from him and his right hand person, Catherine, and then Rachel St. Clair from Claymore Covers did a lot of the design work. Mason Roderick did interior design work and formatting. It's beautiful stuff, and it's not too late if you want a copy.
Okay, so people out there, you hear that it's not too late to pick up a gorgeous special edition of Aching God by Mike SHEL, a fabulous book. And I can certainly attest that the stuff that's on the inside in terms of writing is fabulous. So combine that with the type of artwork with the caliber of which that Mike's been showing, that's going to be something you want for your shelf. So fantastic. Mike, it's been so amazing to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, it's all the links are going to be in this video in terms of your website, etc. But can you talk a bit about where to buy your books, where to track you on social media if you can be tracked, where to interact with you, things like that?
My website is just mikeshel.com. My books are all available at Amazon in electronic format, print. It's on Kindle Unlimited. They're on Kindle Unlimited, and there are audiobooks through Audible of all three as well, narrated by Simon Vance, who is an industry luminary and does a magnificent job with the series. Really just elevates the material beautifully. I am still on the hellscape that is known as Twitter at Mike SHEL Author, and also have I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm hoping that Blue Sky is going to pick up where we will see less Nazi content. So
yes, agreed. Again, Mike, I want to thank you so much. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. For everyone who watched the live or watched the replay after, thank you for tuning in. That you make this type of content what it is, this type of long-form content. And for me, I'm P.L. Stewart, author of the John Kingdom Saga. www.plstewart.com is for the books. The John Kingdom Saga, 7-book series, 4 books currently out. Book 5, A Pack of Wolves, coming in the spring of 2025. Thank you so much for that. Authoring story continues. You can find me on this channel again, the John Kingdom Saga 7847, where I do things like 6 elemental interviews and also book reviews when I can, deep dives, a few different things, top 10 lists. Haven't done as much as I would like to recently, really focusing on the interviews, because there's so many wonderful people like Mike and the community, and so many people have given back so many things to me personally that I really want to have them on and feature them in their work. They're so deserving. So I've been focusing more on the interviews. If I'm going to sacrifice something, it's going to be the other stuff. You can also see me beside my wonderful partner in terms of page chewing, maybe between the pages, the wonderful and talented Taylor. On her channel, check out her channel. She's wonderful. And of course, under the page chewing umbrella, check out Steve's Talks Books page chewing website, where all kinds of wonderful things are going out there, comics and analysis and things like that. And also before we go blog, I'm an assistant editor under the incredible Beth Tabler. Shout out to Beth and the crew and all the wonderful, crazy, warm people at Before We Go blog, all my compatriots. So you check me there. And of course, read my reviews on Goodreads. And I will post a link. The link for my review for Aching God will be this video, because I want you to come and check out this interview with Mike so that you can learn more about him. But of course, I will leave a rating. And but check out Mike SHEL, the Aching God, and anything he writes. Brilliant stuff. Check out the special edition. You saw some of the gorgeous artwork. So definitely think it'll be worth your investment there. And check out Mike and his books, and follow him on social media and interact with them. And again, Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been wonderful. And we will see you later tonight, actually, for another 6 elemental interviews with another wonderful author. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye now. Have a good